This is Henry Frederick of Headline Surfer. This is the Roundtable. I'm going to get right to it. The massacre in Newtown, Connecticut is obviously something the nation and the world are talking about. To my right is Dana Dougherty Swanson. To my left is Stan Escudero. Both are political bloggers here at HeadlineSurfer.com. I'm Henry Frederick. Stan, tell us about your take on the shooting up in Newtown, Connecticut.
Well, it's a horrible tragedy, Henry, that goes without saying.
Right, but beyond that.
But like all tragedies of this kind, it's very important that we not react to it immediately in the grip of the emotion, which naturally overcomes you in the immediate aftermath of such a thing. Everyone wants immediately to reach out and do something. We've got to prevent this. We've got to keep this from happening. Well, there are a great many things that might be done to make it possible, make it less likely that this sort of thing will happen. But the first thing that people seem to be reaching toward is gun control. Now, the Second Amendment gives us the right to keep and bear arms. That's not an issue. But there are people who claim that, well, that shouldn't apply to semi-automatic assault weapons and things like that, and you can make a case one way or another for that. Certain other types of weapons. You can also make a case for the argument that that's the thin edge of the wedge, and if you get that, then other things will follow. Taxes on ammunition, prevention of sale of weapons, or something like this. All sorts of things that could happen. But I think it's very important that people realize that there are a number of nations in the world which have far stricter gun laws than we. Mexico, Brazil, Russia, even the United Kingdom. In Mexico, Brazil, and Russia, the murder rate is higher than it is here. And in the United Kingdom, which has had far stricter gun laws than exists in the United States for decades now, for maybe longer than that, the murder rate has been increasing every year rather than going down. The rate of crimes committed with firearms has been increasing every year instead of going down. In Washington, D.C., when there was a strict ban on firearms, it was one of the deadliest cities in the nation due to firearm crime. Any objective study will show that attempts to control guns, here or elsewhere, have not led to the desired result, which is a reduction in firearms crime. There have to be other ways to approach this. There are other influences on the people other than just the fact that you can reach out and find a gun. Lots of people have guns. Millions of people have guns in the United States. They don't all go around shooting people.
Dana, you jump in now. We were talking earlier, Stan set the stage about how this has come from an emotional, 20 children, 6 and 7-year-old boys and girls in first grade, a heroic principal throwing herself out to try to stop this lunatic, and several other teachers and staff people dying in the process. The thing has swung now where president's now in his second administration, he comes to speak. He's got he's very emotional. The one thing about Obama, he's very charismatic. He knows what to say. You tell me about a TV show that there was pressure to take it off the air.
Well, I was noticing that today that on the Discovery Channel there's a TV show, I think it was called American Guns, about a family of gun sellers that went across the nation. Well, in just in the last, I guess, day or so many people were going after their Facebook page saying you should take them out, that it went from a popular show on the Discovery Channel to now they're pulling the plug because these were gun sellers. How dare they? And so now this popular show Discovery has now been canceled in the wake of people's knee-jerk reaction to this event when you can't blame guns for every ill. There are bad people in this world. And unfortunately, the good people in this world sometimes need their guns to protect themselves from the bad people in this world.
I will end this segment with a thought about guns. I'm a little on the fence about these Bushmaster rifles. I mean, if you're armed in your home and you have a Glock and you have a Sig Sauer or you have a small, handgun or something, why do you need something that can fire off 200 bullets a second? I know it's an exaggeration, but where you can spray. The thing that I think is more noteworthy in looking at all of this is the worst massacres of people by individuals is not with guns. Timothy McVeigh killed a lot of children, preschoolers, children that never got to first grade.
With fertilizer.
Right, with a bomb. And targeting a federal building in Oklahoma City. 1927, a school board member, hand grenades, blew up the school, and then killed himself and the superintendent with a second explosion. The Chechens, was that in, what city was that in? Where 300 people, most of them children, were killed.
Oh, yeah, that's in the Northern Caucasus in Russia.
That was not guns, that was explosives. So,
In the end, yeah.
right, but that's what most, but that's what
Take
most,
over the school,
right.
but yes.
But that's not what killed all these people. And of course, it didn't help that they were gonna storm the place either. But the other thing I think that's really noteworthy is, yes, it's horrible that 20 children died. And there's no way to say except that, to me, the governor of Connecticut was absolutely right when he said, the evil has visited upon us, or something to that effect.
Okay.
That's evil. I just think that when you look at the issue of guns, how many children, how many people are dying every single day in Chicago, in New York, in Miami, Daytona Beach? We had 2 shootings just early this month. 2 guys within 4 days of each other, shot dead. One on the front lawn, another one in the middle of the street.
How about that?
Shot dead. We've had close to 20 murders this year alone in Volusia County. If you add up the numbers on a daily basis, we're a very violent society, we're a very violent world. So I wonder how something that goes from this horrible, I think everybody agrees it's beyond horrible, to now and sort of a mission about what do we do with guns. And we'll go into our second segment with that.
Yes.
So we're back for our second segment on the massacre in Newtown, Connecticut, the 20 children, the 6 adults at the school, and of course the 20-year-old gunman's own mom in her home, in a bed, shot in the face by an obviously deranged and angry son, Adam Lanza. Stan and Dana, you take this out of the equation. What do you have? What are the root causes of the violence? Go ahead, Dana, I'll start with you.
Well, I look at it nowadays where you have so often, it's like, the kids are watching the TV, the violence on TV, things like that, and there's no real human connection between families anymore. Basically, you ever look at somebody dining out, a family, even if they're dining out, you have their kids with their phones or their tablets, they're watching movies. You have everyone else, they're there, but they're not actually connecting. No one is connecting anymore to help each other realize the value of other human beings. When you're so isolated, you're not going to realize every human being has value. Every person has a right to live. If you are so isolated and you're in your own little bubble of violence and whatnot, you lose that connection of empathy for your fellow man.
Stan.
Well, I'm concerned about the impact of political correctness on aspects of our society. It's a fallacious argument to begin with, in my view, but never mind, it's already acquired such dominance in our society that now people, almost any action or set of actions or set of deviations in our society are regarded as not necessarily normal, but as something which cannot be criticized, which cannot be examined, which cannot be dealt with, because we have to be so tolerant of others that we overlook the resultant dangers to society from some who are really dangerous. In the case of this young man, in the case of a couple of college students who in recent years have...
Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech, for example, yes. It was known that they were disturbed individuals. That they were loners, that they were consulting psychiatrists, like this young man who killed all the people in the theater.
The Aurora, Colorado.
Exactly. When you get into situations like this, and it is clear that a person is potentially dangerous, then society needs to have the capacity, and it needs to exercise the capacity to protect society from potential risks. I recognize that that involves a certain amount of preemptive action, but at the very least, there should be a provision for detailed examinations, and perhaps medication, perhaps isolation. It's hard to say, but it's a whole lot better to do that sort of thing than it is to find ourselves reacting in shock and horror to the slaughter of so many innocents by a person whose madness was certainly evident to his mother and apparently to a great number of other people.
Why is it that a soldier in Afghanistan can kill, 12 to 14 civilians? Some sergeant, I can't remember the name, real circumstances, but basically take out a small group of people, and we look at it, oh, that's just another report on the TV. Yet Newtown, Connecticut is like a breadbasket of upper middle class America.
Well, Henry, I don't look at it as just another report on TV. Our soldiers need to be disciplined. They need.
But I'm talking about the reaction back home.
Absolutely kill, slaughter, massacre, destroy those
But that's their
who are
job.
arrayed against them.
Right.
But in the case of killing civilians, unless those civilians are also engaged in a fight against them in some way, and admittedly the roles are blurred in the kind of conflict they're engaging in at the moment, but still, if you simply go in because you're angry at the civilians and you kill the first half a dozen you come to, that can't be tolerated. And that soldier has to be brought to justice. Something has to be done to prevent that. And I'm quite confident, in fact, I know that the military is taking steps through lectures and through examinations of soldiers who are found to be acting a little weird, if you will. They're beginning to pull these people aside and check them to make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen again. I think in this regard, the military could serve as a good example for the rest of society.
The other thing too, and I want to switch gears on the politics of the root of causes of this violence, and that was a very well eloquent way of putting it, Stan, and that is, look at the three, the most popular actors that I can think of right off the top of my head. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Tom Cruise. What do they all have in common? It's like the guns. Big guns, big muscles, take out as covert operations, search and kill. What's the terminology I'm thinking of here? Seek and destroy. Seek and destroy to entertain us. This is Hollywood. The same actors that are rallying a liberal Democratic president to rid society of guns, take all the guns off the streets. But the guns are worse than, aren't there more guns now than even cell phones, than cars?
I have no idea, but it is clear.
It's got to be as easy as anything to get a gun these days.
It is clear to me that we have become a more violent society, and there are a greater number of incidents like the one in Connecticut taking place now than was the case even 20 or 30 years ago. And you have to ask yourself, what has changed? I think Dana is right. The family unit has broken down, and this is in part the result of the baleful influence of television, but I think even more the influence of video games. Now, it's going to be kind of hard.
Which I'll get to that in a minute, but
It's going to be kind of hard to deal with television and Hollywood movies and that kind of thing because there is freedom of speech, but it is also not permissible to shout fire in a crowded theater. And at some point, we're going to have to find a way to address exactly how much of this sort of thing can be shown without it splashing over into influence which might lead people to consider violence just a normal thing. I mean, after all, back in the 30s and so forth, they used to show violence in the movies. Edward G. Robinson would pull out a gun and shoot somebody, and fall to the ground, and there was no blood, and it was all,
right. And their
very
eyes,
civilized.
and their eyes would always close.
Yes, exactly.
Dana,
Not anymore.
Transitioning to TV. In my lifetime, 50 years old, I think of how my life has evolved in terms of the technology you talked about. Gerald Ford, assassination attempt. Lynette Squeaky Fromm. You're lucky you get 3 clips a day. Maybe the ABC News or CBS would break in during a soap opera, bring it to you. Then you'd get to 6 o'clock and then the 11 o'clock, and that was it. Today, you get a shooting like it's instant. Not only that, then you have you have the social media, you have the blogs, you have, everybody coming out of the woodwork and it's bombarding you. I mean, Newtown's like an armed camp. There's gotta be hundreds and hundreds of media outlets descending on that little, nobody ever heard of the Newtown Bee.
Cable news, Henry, 24-hour
Well,
news.
sure, but it's not just cable. It's news on phones and iReporting and what about that impact and bombarding us constantly with this?
Well, I think it almost started like when you're looking at back at 9/11 when such a traumatic event happened, and then they kept showing the planes going in, the buildings constantly, to finally where some people were going, okay, can you stop showing?
Space Shuttle Challenger syndrome.
Yeah.
20,000 times seeing it go up and explode. Teacher dead in space. I mean, it's just all constant. But
At some point, it's morbid.
what I want to do now, before we're going to have a third and final segment.
Exactly the word.
We're going to have a third and final segment, but because as a blogger, I want to focus on for the third and final one to give kudos to. But I want to get into the video games now for a minute or two. While you're talking about people focused on the bombardment, what do we tell our kids? And kids from the age of 9 to 17 to even 20, the age of this, he's still a kid, 20 years old. The video games, they're not bombarded by all these images. They're isolated in their room, in their own world. They've got a gun. Thanks for the show and tell here, Stan. They've got a gun and it's boom, 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 boom. Or they've got a machete. Or they've got some kind of fire apparatus. Or they've got a car that can squish you. Or decapitations, explosions. Different rooms. There's even a game called North American School or something to that effect. I'll have a video presentation on that when we return to online. It's amazing to me how like another world almost. Like it's not like Gunsmoke or Marshall Dillon or the Big Valley. It's World War III.